Welcome to the Way of Skill. Today we're going to talk about why meditation is not boring. So I often talk to people about meditation because I'm that guy. And I usually hear something like this. Quote, I know it's supposed to be good for you, and I've tried it, but I can't do it. So I dig, obviously. And three things usually emerge. Number one is I can't sit and do nothing because my mind is too active. Number two is meditation is boring. And number three is, well, I do walks or I read or I dance, and that's also meditation. And to be honest, this actually makes me a little sad to hear because it's all wrong. It's misinformation. But I'm also a little bit happy because the truth is better and it's more exciting, and then I get to share it. So that's what I'm going to do with you here. Now, by the end of this episode, my goal is for you to have a helpful mental model of what meditation is, how you can do it, some practical tips for what you should do to make it fun, and some inspiration about like what it can do for you. What I'm going to cover is this. So number one, meditation is not doing nothing. It's a kind of activity. Number two, meditation is actually a special activity. It has a different use from the walking and the reading and so on. And then number three, meditation is not boring. You're experiencing it as painful, and then that pain and frustration is a sign of something to do, and it's something you can deal with. Okay? That's what we're going to do. So, number one, meditation is not doing nothing. A lot of people seem to think that meditation is where you sit on the floor in an uncomfortable pose, and then you wait. And your worries and your regrets, they climb out of that inner abyss, and then they have a party on the insides of your eyelids. And then you sit there and you wait that some kind of transformation will happen. And I'm sorry, but that's just being uncomfortable. I've done that too. And I've tried to power through. And what happens is nothing happens. And then the timer rings and I say, oh, thank God. So this is not the approach to meditation. It's not possible to do nothing. You're always doing something. It's not possible to not think, to say to yourself, don't think, and then you don't think. That's a recipe to frustrate yourself. So how do we understand this? Well, actually doing nothing and not thinking are not so much methods of meditating, and definitely not for a beginner. They're more like possible results of meditating. So if you meditate for a while, you could get into a state where you feel like you're not doing anything and you're just comfortably still. Or you could get into a state where it feels like there's no thinking happening and it's just a relief. And that's nice. But the way that you actually get there is by engaging your mind. It's not by pretending your mind's not there. So the first thing to learn is actually meditation is an activity, and there's a lot of different activities you could be doing. So it's actually like exercise. So you can exercise your body in all kinds of ways, right? You could dance, you could do sports, you could do drills, you could lift weights, and they all develop different strengths, different skills, but they all contribute to that same healthy and capable body. And the same is true of meditation techniques, where they're like exercises for your heart and your mind. There's techniques that are pleasant, so like goodwill. There's techniques that are playful, like visualization. And there's techniques that are kind of intricate, like full body breathing. And I'm actually here just to tell you not so much, oh, this is the one technique, but rather you get to try stuff. Actually, meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be do nothing. It's not supposed to be boring. It's not supposed to be like that. It actually should be fun for you. So then you might ask, why is there some emphasis on doing nothing and not thinking? There is something to this. So here's what you have to understand. Imagine you're picking up woodworking and you go into your woodworking shop, but you're thinking about an argument that you just had with your spouse. In that case, you're probably going to do a lousy job of woodworking because you're not paying attention. And the same thing is true for meditation, but meditation is more difficult. And the reason is that the material is not lumber. The material is your mind and your feelings. And that stuff is subtle. It's slippery. It moves fast. The other issue is that stuff's inside. You don't have the external feedback. So if you drop a piece of lumber to the ground and, it clatters, that's going to wake you up. But when you meditate and you get distracted, you could just forget what you're doing completely. And then a couple of minutes later, you're like, wait a second, I wasn't meditating at all. So the distraction issue is greater in meditation, but the solution is basically the same thing. Like, how do you get focused on, the woodworking? Well, it's fun, it's interesting, and you just let go of the other stuff you're doing and you get into it. And the same thing is true for meditating. Like, you got to get engaged. And if you're pretending that you're a robot and you're saying do nothing, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to get engaged enough that you can let go of all those thoughts. So let me just summarize all that. First off, meditation is actually more like a kind of exercise. It's definitely an activity and not doing nothing. And there's actually a lot of different ways that you could be doing it. And meditation is subtle. It's working with stuff that's subtle. And so actually, you need to be more engaged to meditate properly. You need to be more alive, not less alive. Okay, I hope that convinces you it's not doing nothing. Now, the second thing I want to convince you of is that your music listening sessions might be very meditative and healing, but they're not going to get you the same results as a formal meditation. And let me explain what I mean by formal meditation. I specifically mean you sit still, you turn off any kind of stimulation or distractions, and you do something within. You do some activity within. That is not just, this is not just thinking about your day. It's an activity. It's an exercise. Okay. And so how do we understand this? Well, the difference is that there's activities that ground you, right? And then there's activities that train you. And meditation is a training. You practice it, you put effort into it. And then the grounding side it's more of a side effect of meditating. But the main thing that you get from meditating is skills. You get a set of skills. And in that respect, it's like an art. So that's the reason actually people talk about a meditation practice, right? And they don't talk about a going for a walk practice. That's not really a thing. So one thing that might be the case is actually you might not be able to do a formal meditation right now. Like, it might be terrible. That's okay. It's actually part of a bigger family of activities. And I'm going to explain a bit about that so that you have a framework for putting meditation into, and then I can explain why meditation is a bit special. So the framework is cultivation. So what do I mean by that? Cultivation is the inside out approach to making life better. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So think about how you normally make your life better. You want to have better stuff. You want better experiences. You want more power, better relationships, more status, or have better accomplishments in life. And all that is supposed to make you feel better, right? Now that's the outside in approach. And that makes perfect sense, and you should do that, and it's good and all that stuff. But also, if you take a look at the world that we live in and you look at the powerful people in the world who've done a lot of things, it becomes very obvious that no matter how much you have outside, it will never be enough. And that's why every culture in the world also has an inside out approach to complement that, right? That is where cultivation comes in. But cultivation is a bit different from your absolute low level spirituality, religion, in that it's not about believing in things. It's about doing things. So if you believe in a God or you believe in oneness or something, and then that's supposed to solve a problem for you, that in itself would not be cultivation. But if you were to pray, that would be cultivating. If you do yoga, running, volunteering, talking to a friend, all of those things could be cultivation if they're done with the right kinds of intentions. And I could say a lot more about cultivation, but that will be in another episode. For now, that's just a framework, right? There's all these things. They're all good. They're all making you better from the inside out. And so they're cultivating. But meditation is special within this. Why is it special? Two things. So meditation is, number one, an inner lab. And number two, it's a direct approach for working with what's inside. So inner lab, what do I mean? I actually mean it's like a scientific laboratory. You're sitting still and you're removing stimulation. And it's just like a scientist in a lab, removes all the sources of noise, and they control the temperature, and they make sure that, their petri dish has nothing contaminating it. And why is that? Because they want to see what's happening on a very detailed level. They want to understand cause and effect on a very detailed level. And to do that, they need to remove all the other things that could be interfering with their vision. And meditation is like that. And so by creating that inner lab, you're getting like a microscope inside. You can see things that you can't see in normal life. And then you can use that as an opportunity to train things which you can't really train in normal life. It's too hard. And you can observe things that you can't normally observe. And you're supposed to develop stuff in this lab, right? Just like you develop some new technology in a lab. And then once you've got it working there, you bring it out into the noisier, the more complex parts of everyday life. So that's the lab bit, which is special. And then the other special bit is that it's very direct. What I mean by that is, like, let's say I go for a walk, and the activity of going for a walk is having a nice effect on me. That's great. But am I working on the actual material of the mind or the heart? Like, am I working on thoughts or feelings? Well, no. I'm doing something with my body that happens to have a nice effect. So in meditation, you're working directly with that material. And that can be difficult, but it's also an amazing opportunity. It's not like these other things. Now, why you should be interested in this is because meditation is particularly relevant now. That is, like, in the world we live in today, we are bombarded by stimulation and temptation, right? Our minds are under attack. And our ancestors, right, our lovely farmer ancestors, did not have to deal with this kind of environment. They had other problems. So we live in a world where everything is designed to be addictive, and therefore meditation offers us some very valuable things. We're talking control over your attention. We're talking the ability to let go of compulsive thinking and desires. We're talking about the ability to be comfortable with lower stimulation activities and situations. Like, what is that? That is the ability to focus on what's important in life and to be able to do the things that are important, that are not perfectly designed to stimulate us. That's actually so critical in the world we live in today. And that's why people are so interested in meditation now. Now, with all that said, you don't have to meditate to get better, but I do want you to feel that meditation is available to you. It is your birthright as a human being. Like, we all have this innate capacity to go inside of ourselves and to work on a direct level with our thinking and feeling. Every human culture, no matter where it is in the world, has some analog of this activity of going, being alone, being with yourself, and being there for a certain extended period of time. So this is a natural thing, even if it's not comfortable for you to do right now today. And I'm going to talk about how we can get there to making it comfortable in the next section. But let me just summarize. So what have I said? I've said there is cultivation, which is the inside-out approach to making life better. And all of those activities you're doing are good and can fit into a broader cultivation practice. However, meditation remains special. It's an inner lab environment, and it gives you the opportunity to directly work with the material of your mind and your heart. The skills that you will learn in meditating are of particular importance to the world we live in today and the challenges that we have. And meditation is something that we see in all cultures and that all human beings are naturally capable of doing, even if it might not be comfortable for them to do in the beginning. So now let's move on to this question of, like, how do we make meditation something good for us? And the most common thing I hear is, and maybe this is you, this has been me at various points of time, I hear meditation is boring, right? Meditation sucks. It's so boring. And actually, when I hear that, I hear two things. I hear meditation is painful, and I hear meditation isn't working for me. Because boredom is really, it's a kind of pain. Like, this is coming from a lot of different places, I think. And I'm just going to lay out where I think it's coming from. First off, we are all addicted to media, which provides zero effort gratification. I am addicted to that kind of media as well. So you take me off my feed of stimulation and I get upset. In addition to this, we don't have a really good handle on our thinking patterns. Like, we have these thought patterns that actually are painful on their own, and then we notice them when we meditate. And then we think about meditation in such a way that it becomes frustrating. Specifically, and I have done this many times, thinking about meditation like it's a vending machine. That's really not the way to go. And I'll explain that in more detail. But first, the painful bit. So you have these thought patterns. They're distressing, they're painful, they're compulsive, whatever it might be. And the first part of sort of solving the problem is actually reframing. This stuff is not happening because you're meditating. This stuff is happening all the time. Meditating is just giving you the opportunity to see it. That's actually useful. So thing number one is meditation is a checkup. It's a diagnostic. You're just seeing what's going on. So if you're super stressed and you can't relax, that's showing up. If you're troubled by your worries, that's showing up. If you're addicted and you're constantly feeling this compulsion to go do this or that, like, that's going to show up. But meditation isn't causing that. It's just revealing that. That's nice. that actually is a great opportunity for you, because it means now that I can see these things, well, these things have been going on throughout my life. A lot of my activities maybe are actually ways of dealing with these thought patterns. And so maybe if I can find a way of letting go of them, that will actually change things about the other parts of my life. So then the question is, how do you let go? The answer is like, yes, you can let go, right? So that's a skill, actually. That's a discrete skill. Like a compulsion, letting go of a compulsion. That's a thing you can do. And just like tips there. Number one is, if you can see it as a feeling, that's very helpful. So, whatever the particular thing is that you're compelled by or angry or worried about or whatever, if you could just see it as a feeling and then it comes and it goes, that's very helpful, because it comes and it goes and it comes and goes again and again, and your relationship to it changes. And then number two is your breathing is very helpful. So if you can figure out, is my breath catching? Is it not smooth? Is it uncomfortable when these feelings are coming up? That's very helpful. And then number three is if you can relax. So if you can catch a feeling like, oh, I'm feeling impatience, let's relax. And you just relax a bit. That can make a difference. And you can practice doing that. Anyways, you're going to have to find your own tricks in this case. Like, there's a lot of very detailed things here. But if you do practice this, you will actually get better at letting go of these patterns. And then once, again, it's the inner lab. So once you figure out how to do it while you're meditating, and you practice and you practice and you practice, then you might be able to do it in your everyday life when you notice it coming up and you're doing your work or whatever. And you're like, oh, let me try that thing that I tried when I was meditating. And then boom, maybe it works. So that's the letting go part of this. And then the third thing that's helpful is actually enjoying your meditation more. And so that gets us to the frustration part. I am very guilty of this, which is thinking about meditation as a vending machine. I push the right button, I'm supposed to get the goodies. And if I don't get the goodies, I'm not happy. The problem is, this is just not the right way of thinking about the activity. So you're just setting yourself up for frustration. It's not a formula, really. It's an art, okay? But it's an art that is so deep and basic that the best analogy I can give you is that you are a baby who is learning to walk. No joke. Like that's really the closest thing I could come up with. Like at the beginning, for myself, like I could scream very well, but I could not get where I wanted to go. And like not only that, like I couldn't really see what was happening. I could kind of vaguely see what was happening. I couldn't really keep track of my thoughts or my feelings. I could just barely tell. And over time, through practicing, I could both see things more clearly and sense things more clearly, and also understood like what things to do and what levers to pull to start to get results, such that it like became like I could walk in a particular direction. The kind of closest example I can try to give you is if you actually try to sit down and close your eyes and then feel your breath, you'll notice that there's just an insanely large number of different feelings that are going on, and an insanely large number of thoughts that are like whizzing by. You're not in a situation where you can just say, do this result happens. All you can do is explore. All you can do is try things. And so that is the way that you have to do this. You have to pretend that you're a baby and you're just trying things and you're seeing what happens. And over time, you'll learn that some things work and some things don't work, and this is how things fit together. Now, the good part of that is actually you are so far away from what's possible that you'll rapidly experience improvements. You'll rapidly learn things, and like the level that you can get to is one where you're like, wow, I can't believe that's even possible for me. That's really how good it can get. So just to you can imagine, like, what if you could pick a mental or an emotional state and then just go there inside? You're like, I know what to do to get there. Boom. That's something that could be possible for you. And then you could see, okay, how different could my life look if I had that ability internally? The key to this attitude is, again, that like the baby is not going to give up in frustration, because the baby's just trying stuff and just like learning. And the key is to get interested in the process. Like the more interested you are, the more experimenting you're doing, the more curious you are, the more fun this is going to be. So let me summarize that whole section, and then I'll move on to like more concrete tips. Number one, you are getting bored. Well, boredom is a kind of pain. You're experiencing pain. Let's get interested in where that pain is coming from. How do we deal with it? Number one, Actually, you should reframe it as an opportunity. It's interesting. This is something you're learning about that's happening in your everyday life. It's affecting you. And how can we start to learn to let it go? Well, you can see it as a feeling. You can modulate your breathing to try to affect it, and you can relax. Then there's how we think about meditation and why that's frustrating. And again, literally, you're a baby learning to walk. You don't need to put pressure on yourself, and you can't really expect that you're going to get the results by just like pressing the button. But you can learn an amazing amount, and it's really cool, and there's so much to explore here. So you got to just try things. Now, moving on to the tips. So I have like my 3 things that you can do to make meditation fun. Pre-meditation, attitude, selection. I'll go through each. So pre-meditation, this is when you have a hard time meditating. And that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be that you're not behaving in ways that you feel comfortable with. It could be that you don't have an okay sense of yourself. It could be that you're just stressed and very tense. Depending on what the issue is, like if you're treating other people badly or your sense of yourself is not good, then meditation maybe doesn't represent a solution. That's more like, you got to go see somebody, some wise and trusted person who can kind of help you sort that stuff out. But if you're just tense, or you're just, you just have a lot of compulsion, or you're just super active, then you can do some other things that might make meditation possible. So number 1 pre-meditation technique, do something right before you meditate, right? You take a bath, or you do yoga, or you do breath work or something just before you meditate. And you just see, does that make meditation possible for me? Does it make it good? Or you don't meditate at all, and you just meditate once a week just to check how things are going, and you do some other technique that produces some clarity and some relaxation. That technique could be yoga nidra, that technique could be breath work, that technique could be whatever. But you're picking a different technique which you find easy, right? Which maybe is more intense, and so it's like easier for you to get into. And then over time, that might, again, as a cultivation method, that might open up the opportunity for meditation to become more practical for you. So that was pre-meditation. The second is attitude. I've already said a lot about attitude. I'm just putting it in here because attitude is critical. If your attitude is exploration and curiosity, then you are probably going to have fun. If your attitude is like a robot, or like, I got to press the button and get this result, then it's probably not going to work out for you that easily. Okay, finally, there's selection. So the key to everything here is consistency. It's going to be helpful if you do it consistently. Okay, so how do we get consistency? We pick a technique that's easy. We pick a technique that feels like it makes a difference in our lives. And we pick a technique that's fun. Okay, so I suggest you like try a bunch of techniques and find one that kind of fits those things, because that's probably what's going to set you up for success. Now, at the end of all that, again, pre-meditation, attitude, selection. At the end of all that, you might still be like, okay, can you just like give me something to try? And I do have something, if that's what you want. It is goodwill meditation, also known as loving kindness, also known as metta. What this consists of is you imagine somebody, could be yourself, could be somebody else, and you're trying to feel a sense of goodwill for them, good intentions for them. So the typical starting point is you say some phrases like, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be kind, may you live with ease, and so on. And if that isn't working that well, you could try anything. So you can imagine a baby or a puppy or whatever will get that kind of good feeling going. And you might say, okay, that sounds kind of like praying. Don't worry, it's not praying, it's meditation. But once you get those feelings going, then you shift towards the feelings themselves or the intentions themselves, and you just use them as your focus. And you see where that goes. And as I've said before, this is a playful thing. This is an exploratory thing. This is interesting. If you're not feeling them for some reason, that's interesting. What is it easy to feel them for? What's it not easy to feel them for? If I think in a different way, does it become easier to feel this kind of goodwill? Right? If I think of a political figure, is it easier or difficult? Why? What can I do to make it easier? It's interesting. Anyways, why am I recommending this? Well, number one, it's just a very helpful practice, right? If you do this, you're going to find your day probably goes better. You're going to find you're probably an easier person to live with. That's kind of nice. It's also a good diagnostic. So if you're having a hard time feeling it, like You might have a hard time feeling it for yourself, which is common, or for other people, which is also common, very common. That's a sign that maybe there's something to work on. There's an opportunity to feel better about some part of your life. And maybe there's a forgiveness thing to do, or maybe there's a letting go thing to do, whatever it might be. Now, I'm going to let you in on a secret. The other thing that goodwill gives you is it is productive of happiness. What I mean is if you can keep your goodwill consistent, you can keep it going when you are faced with suffering. If you can keep it going when other people are getting success, and maybe you're not, then that goodwill is actually protective of happiness. It's really an amazing thing when you can make goodwill consistent. So I'm just going to go back over, the tips here. We have the three main things: premeditation, attitude, and selection. If you can get those right, you can make meditation much more fun. And then we have goodwill, which is a great place to start and try. And goodwill is helpful because it's productive of happiness. I have one final tip for you, which is like any challenging art or skill, meditation requires constant practice. If you don't keep it up, it degrades. And the key to sticking with it, as it's true for any other skill, is to make meditation social. That might be like weird to hear, right? Meditation is supposed to be internal. Why does it have to be social? Well, if you involve other people in it, if you become part of a community, if you share your successes and failures with other people, then you are much more likely to keep doing it even if you don't feel like doing it. You're much more likely to be inspired to stick with it because we're social beings. That is how we structure our world. So that's my last tip for you, and that covers everything I wanted to say. I hope now, after hearing all this, you think, maybe meditation's more interesting than I thought. You think, maybe the thing I tried before, maybe that's not all there is. Maybe there's some more interesting things for me to play around with here. And so I really hope you are inspired to give it a shot, or if it's not meditation, to give some other cultivation method a shot with an eye towards, achieving a situation where meditation becomes available to you. That's cool too. My final thing is, please do reach out. I love to hear about people's experiences. I love to hear what you tried, what worked and what didn't work. And I love to hear your questions. So do reach out. That's all. Thanks.